So the idea is that you should stop taking Conquer on Ezreal. Now, I know most of you felt the diarrhea coming on as soon as you heard that, but today, I promise we'll be breaking the Ezreal meta that has stood for almost 3 or 4 years now. I told you. I told all of you, but nobody wanted to listen to me. They called me a madman, and here we are. Anyway, sorry for the groggy voice, guys. I swear I'm not trying to get you wet. I just woke up, and I need to get this video done, so... Anyway, a couple of months ago, actually, almost a year ago now, Jesus Christ. Almost a year ago, I made a video called The Mathematically Incorrect Rune for Ezreal. And in this absolute masterpiece of a video, I went into excruciating detail on how absolutely awful Conqueror was on Ezreal. Everyone said I was crazy. Everyone told me this was the reason my dad left. They said my father foresaw what his son would become, and he had to skidoo skiday and drive away before he became an accomplice to this madness. At any rate, all 2,000 of you ruffians who watched that video now know I was correct a year ago. Not that it's about taking credit, but I'll gladly take the credit. Now in that video I proposed my own replacement for Conqueror to some varying reactions from the community, but doing these more serious videos about optimal builds and things like that have made me realize, man, League players are so brain dead. I mean, everyone knows that, but it's one thing to just see it in person over and over again. Like the way people argue for why their concept is right or wrong is just just utterly insane. Like, I'm not saying I'm always right, of course not, but it's just the way they approach the conversation and what they think solid arguments are that are aiding them in proving their point. Like, my views are not even being challenged because it's always just, you're just bad, bro. So I was going through that Conqueror's videos comments again, and I started to feel a pain in the left side of my body. I think I was in danger of having a stroke if one more person said Conqueror made Ezreal an early game champion. It's no wonder I started writing these 18-page reports in response to these comments. Now, for those of you who have not kept up with the new Ezreal developments, the consensus has recently changed, and I think it was around MSI, but people have now started taking Press the Attack on Ezreal. Now allow me to read an excerpt from when I was trying to communicate with these aliens a year ago. If you're basing your entire argument solely on the early game trading, then there's still a better rune than Conqueror, and that's PTA. If that's all you're arguing, then take PTA because it is actually infinitely better than Conqueror early game in pretty much every way, especially on Ezreal.
You're not the only one cursed with knowledge.
So let's talk about PTA. PTA was a rune that I tried out in the early days of trying to find an alternative to Conquer, and I came up with a few takeaways. Number one is, obviously, PTA is just better than Conquer, for the goal Conquer is trying to achieve, which is early game trading, because as I went over in that video, Conquer scales like ass. But as you see here, I'm playing Ez with PTA against a lane that wants to all in, which is the optimal spot for the combat runes on Ezreal. The enemy wants to come into you, and that works in Ezreal's favor. But before I go over the clip, I want to just humbly apologize to any and all Ezreal mains who are watching me unironically using Pulsefire Ezreal, because if pay-to-lose skins were like the NBA, this skin is LeBron James. 8 straight finals, 4 MVPs, 4 rings. Picking this skin is actually a detriment to performing well on Ezreal, and I'm not even joking, which is the funny part. But you have to understand, I paid $50 for the skin, so I gotta take it out for a walk every now and again. Don't worry, I've already punished myself.
Dobby! Stop! Dobby!
I've already said my Hail Marys just in case the devil was looking for a way in, and as soon as he saw me lock in this skin, he just started licking his lips. And I won this game, so not today, Satan. But back to the clip though. You see here we have the enemy bot lane codenames Thresh to rank 1 and Homework is Good. Just the deadliest duo in the league. They're about to beat me with their collective depression. So we're in a scenario where my support gets hooked by the ghost of Christmas past, it seems, and the enemy engages on it. I E forward to try and dissuade the Samira from engaging like Dora does with Swiper to a lesser degree of success. And then I auto Thresh once just to let him know that I don't know where my mouse is on my screen, so even I don't know what's about to happen here. But there's pretty much no way for my support to get out, and I end up trading the kill and then walking away, otherwise the entire generation of minions in front of me would have taken me out. Now this might seem like a random clip to show, but I think it actually exemplifies what PTA does perfectly. In a situation like this, PTA just has insanely better value than Conqueror does. Conqueror takes 12 stacks, PTA only 3. Quick maths. It's so simple, right? And yet pro players only changed it 2 weeks ago. Crazy how it's almost like they don't know what they're doing half the time. In short skirmishes, the fact that PTA can have almost instant impact is infinitely better than whatever damage you get from Conquer. Ezreal is not a DPS champion, he's about cooldowns and keeping distance, short combos, especially early game when he has insanely long cooldowns. Auto, Q auto, that's the patented Ezreal combo in lane, and the fact that that procs PTA makes it colossally favored when it comes to trading and laning phase. Now takeaway number 2, press the attack is better now than it was back then because of durability. The big problem with press the attack is that outside of laning phase it doesn't provide a lot, especially for Ezreal. Or I should say specifically for Ezreal. Ezreal wants to keep his distance and poke, and that obviously isn't proccing press the attack very often until the full fight starts. Maybe it adds 200, maybe 300 damage a fight, and that's on the high end. And before the durability patch, there was so much burst in the game that the exposed damage didn't really have that much of an impact on those fights and felt more luxury than impactful. But with durability, you see that that extra 8 to 12% bonus damage has a higher upside in the longer team fights. Ezreal is strongest around level 11, so at that point the exposure damage is doing an extra 10 damage to the enemy, which is definitely very strong. Right here you can see the chimp is casually face tanking and 1v3ing us in the mid lane, nothing new. And at the end of the fight, PTA ends up adding an extra 250 damage. Considering he almost peeled my banana through my Lulu, hey, I'll take any damage I can get. Now watch this one. I'm at 3 items as Ezreal, relatively even game. The enemy has a Yone jungle, so you already know I had my therapist on the phone setting up an appointment for after the 5th time getting killed by Yone, traveling the length of 3 football stadiums and then just tipping his hat and peacing out. But notice my press the attack is at 1000 damage done right here. And just watch what it goes to. So I see someone is harassing my chickens, and I go over there to see if anybody wanted to volunteer to make my damage at the end of the game look better by eating some Qs that won't have an impact on the game whatsoever. I call it the Ezreal special, but turns out Inuyasha was waiting for me to do just that, and then he ults this bush, I guess just to trim it down a little bit, and whatever ecosystems existed in that bush are gonna end up in a Yone montage. And right here, take a second to look at his team. They have absolutely no idea this is even happening. This guy literally sees me and runs at me on cooldown. Thank God for Dance Dance, and thank God for durability, because we can all agree these types of horrible plays worked before. But if we could just get a damage check real quick, it added 300 damage to that skirmish. Definitely much improved from when I played it back in the day, mostly because I would have been dead halfway through that fight. Which brings me to my next takeaway, which is some of the cons for press the attack. So just picture this, right? You're around 15, 16 years old, and you have a strange addiction to anime girls with tentacles, and after a long day of getting bullied at school, you come home, you load up some League, and then you decide to pick Caitlyn bot lane, just to feel something. And that scenario, you as the Ezreal player just make this face and accept your fate for the first 15 minutes of this game. And my point is that in situations like this, press the attack really isn't adding much, by the simple fact that you're going to be under your tower farming and trying to scale. You run into the same paradox that Conquer ran into, which is an early game skirmishing Rune on not an early game skirmishing champion. Like I said, PTA is made better by durability, but that's for later in the game. Early game, which is really the reason you pick this Rune, is just not that realistic to expect to have great value for it every game. It depends a lot on matchups, obviously, but the truth is, like I said in my Conquer video, the way most matchups would go as Ezreal is he gets shoved in. The way you win against Ezreal is not to fight him and kill him, but to push him in and make him farm under tower, mess up his economy. That's how you win. My point is that because Ezreal never really has lane control, whether it's the Psychos picking Caitlyn, or they pick Varus or Xayah or Jinx or Jhin or Lucian or Draven or Trist or Kai'Sa or Kog'Maw, you're gonna be getting shoved in a lot of the time. At which point you might as well take Aftershock and, I don't know, start swinging your dick like a helicopter and fly away, because that will at least do some psychological damage to the enemy team. The same goes for later in the game. Like I said, this Rune has the same problems Conquer does, because it proccing isn't always guaranteed. Ezreal always wants to keep distance and play around cooldowns, and if you're poking and you get a couple of stacks on somebody, then attack somebody else, then those stacks get erased. Then even when the fight starts, you're only applying it to one character at a time, where Conquer technically buffed all your abilities so that you did more damage to everyone. Again, it's a small distinction, but very important in how much value a champion gets out of a rune. A champion like Fiora will always proc this, always. She's guaranteed to proc it if she's fighting someone, she's procking it and using the exposed damage. That's not the case with Ezreal, because of how he wants to play in space. If you're Eing in and engaging, it's usually once the fight is already over and you're just chasing kills, or you're Eing away and again trying to create space like Ezreal wants to do. Both of those scenarios leave press the attack not being utilized for anything valuable, or at least not to the most valuable that it could be. Like I said, this rune is better than Conquer by a mile because it's so easy to proc, but just procking it doesn't do damage outside of laning phase. It does like 100 damage at level 11. The power shifts to the exposure, but because of how Ezreal plays, he's not always getting value out of the exposure. Anyway, that's why pros have started to take PTA on Ezreal. If you took Conqueror before, then yeah, this is just infinitely better than Conqueror was. And that was true a year ago, and it certainly is true now. But with that said, leave a like if you tickle pickles. Mine is wrinkled. And roll the outro, bitch. I'm not even gonna attempt. Usually I do like the high pitch, like bitch at the end of it, but I can't do it, guys. I really can't. Not right now. Not right now. But anyway, see you guys later. Bye.